This is your last chance.
Yeah.
And life is a life song.
Sentiment is my forte. I keep the science for life blend.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Ah. Oh, my. By the way, Lady, I see from your book that 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
8 bottles and a pint, sir.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I've only been married once, and that was in consequence of a misunderstanding.
I don't know that I'm interested in your family life, Lady.
No, it's not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. I mean, really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use in them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Ah, how are you, my dear Ernest? Well, what brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure. What should bring anyone else anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algie.
Well, I believe it is customary in good society for one to take some slight refreshment at,
5 o'clock, sir.
5 o'clock. 5 o'clock? Where have you been?
In the country.
Ha! What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Neighbors.
Got nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. I never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. And by the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Yes. Of course. Hello, what is this? Why these cucumber sandwiches? Why these cups? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
Dearly, my Aunt Augusta.
And
And Gwendolyn.
Oh, how perfectly delightful!
Yes, that is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
And may I ask why?
Dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I'm in love with Gwendolyn. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you would come up for pleasure. I call that business.
Oh, how utterly unromantic you are.
No, I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. One may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. And then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try and forget that fact.
The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memory is so curiously constituted.
There's no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please, don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They were ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
But you've been eating them all the time!
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Now have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
And what very good bread and butter it is, too.
Well, my dear fellow, you need not eat as if you were going to eat it all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
And why on earth would you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry when they flirt. Girls don't think it's right.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you'll have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? And what on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily? I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time you got here.
Do you mean to tell me you've had my cigarette case this whole time? I wish to goodness you would let me know. I was writing very frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offered an extremely large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
Good offer an award now that the thing is found.
Well, I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter. For now that I look at the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours at all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you've no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It is very unacceptable to read a private cigarette case.
It's absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture with you. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case, is it? This cigarette case is a present from someone by the name of Cecily. But you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes. Charming old lady she is, too, lives up at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back, Algie.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives in Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
Dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some ants are tall, some ants are not tall. That doesn't matter that an ant should be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that her aunt is exactly like your aunt. That's absurd. Don't take this, give it back.
Why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There's no objection I admit to an aunt being a small ant, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out. Your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me your name's Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone who does that. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Ernest. It was on your cards. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, before the album. I shall keep this as proof that your name is Ernest. If you ever attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes! Oh, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives in Tunbridge Wells, called you her dear uncle. Come on, boy, you much better have the thing out at once.
My dear fellow, you speak exactly as if you were a dentist. It is very vulgar to speak like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces false impressions.
That's exactly what dentists always do. Now go on, tell me everything. I may mention that I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret bunburyist, and I am quite sure of it now.
What on earth is a bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Earnest in town and Jack in the country.
Produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was just a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as uncle from motives of respect that you couldn't possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I will tell you candidly, however, that the place is not in Shropshire.
Well, I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have bunburyed all over Shropshire, on 2 separate occasions. Now go on, why Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, I don't know whether you will be able to understand my true explanations. You're hardly serious enough. When one is placed in a position of guardian, one must adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. Indeed, it's one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce much towards one's health or one's happiness. In order to get up to town, I've always pretended to having a brother by the name Earnest who lives in the Albany and gets in the most dreadful scrapes from time to time. That, my dear fellow, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
Here. Quite good, huh? No, the truth is rarely pure and never simple. A modern life would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
Now, that wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. You should leave that to people who haven't been at a university. And they do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you were a bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest, in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down into the country whenever I choose. Now, Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight. Well, I really didn't engage at Augusta for more than a week now.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You are certainly careless about sending out invitations. It is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
I really think you would much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family and either sent down with no women at all or 2. I know perfectly well whom she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar. God, who always flirts with her husband across the dinner table. It is not very pleasant, indeed. It is not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women who flirt with their husbands in London, it's perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. And then simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'm going to kill him in any case. Cecily's a little too much interested in him. So I'm going to get rid of Earnest, and I strongly advise you to do the same with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. If you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
Well, that is nonsense. If I marry a sweet, charming girl like Gwendolyn, and she is the only girl I saw in my life, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in marriage life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear Carlo, is the theory that the corrupt French drama have been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home has proved in half that time.
Don't try to be so cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
Oh, my dear fellow, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. No! If I get her out of the way for 10 minutes so that you can have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you over Ulysses tonight?
I suppose so. You want to?
Yes. But you must be serious about it. Ugh, I hate people who are not serious about their meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. Go and enjoy the sun, ladies. Make sure to come when I call. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, it's just.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I'm always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, well, I hope I'm not that. It would leave no room for development. And I intend to develop in many different directions.
I'm sorry that we are a little late, Algernon. I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't seen her since her poor husband's death. I've never seen a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now for tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here? Gwendolyn!
No, thank you, Mama. Quite comfortable where I am.
Gwendolyn! Good heavens, Blaine, why are there no cucumber sandwiches?
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
For ready money.
That will do, Blaine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers, not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with dear Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear your hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its color, but from what cause I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I have quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight, after all.
I hope not. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he's accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact is I just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury has fallen very ill again. They seem to think I should be with them.
This is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say I think it's high time that this Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way condone the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I will rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and I want something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when one has said practically everything they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. And I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen, and if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program I've drawn out, if you'll kindly come into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think they're improper, and look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German seems a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe it is so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me?
Yes, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else. That makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I'd like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly to a room which I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I've met you, I've admired you more than any girl I've ever met. Since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish that, in public by any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you've always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The idea is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines. It has reached the provincial pulpits, I'm told. And my ideal has always been to love someone by the name Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. And the moment that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me? Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest!
But you don't really mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
Yes, but your name is Ernest.
Yes! I know it is. Supposing it was something else. Do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
That is a purely metaphysical speculation. And like all metaphysical speculations, there's absolutely no reference to the actual facts of life as we know them.
Well, Gwendolyn, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name Ernest. I don't think it suits me at all.
Of course, it suits you. It's a divine name. It has a certain music to it. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack? Oh. No. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. And besides, I've known several Jacks, and they all, without any exception, have been more than usually plain. And Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She will probably never know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only truly safe name, Ernest.
Gwendolyn, I must be christened at once. I mean, we must be married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married? Mr. Worthing.
Well, surely you know that I love you, and you've led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you're not absolutely indifferent to me either.
I adore you, but nothing at all has been said about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn?
Yes, Mr. Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
You don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Yes, 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 of course, darling. How long have you been about it? I'm afraid you have very little experience in how to propose.
My own one, I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, I know, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully brown eyes you have, Ernest. Yes, they are quite brown. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when other people are present.
Master Worthing! Rise up from this semi-reclined posture, it is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished? What? May I ask?
Mr. Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
Pardon me. You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing, while I am making these inquiries. You, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mama!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mama.
Gwendolyn, in the carriage! You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men. Although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. But I am quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a truly affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I am glad to hear it. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to be married should either know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone.